Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Weissbourd. I am the co-director of the Human Development Psychology program and the director of the Making Caring Common project here at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I'm also the leader of Turning the Tide, which is a national effort to rethink college admissions. So very relevant to what we're talking about today that involves about 200 colleges around the country. I wanted, before we get started, just give a shout out, as I try to do every week, to all the students and teachers and parents out there. I know your work is not getting any easier, and we all just are deeply grateful and appreciative for your commitment and your courage and your grace during this time. And I want to welcome you to Education Now, a new initiative by the Harvard Graduate School of Education to try and respond to the dramatic changes and disruptions in all of our lives and in our educational lives in particular. And in these webinars, we're going to talk candidly about issues in teaching, leading, learning, living. And I really want to encourage you to share your comments and questions. There's a Q&A box down here that you can just enter questions, and we will save 10 minutes at the end for any questions that you have. All right, I am delighted to introduce our guest today, Rachelle Hernandez, a collaborator for a number of years. She serves as the Senior Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Service and Student Success at the University of Texas at Austin. Rachelle is a frequent national speaker on admissions and student access, enrollment management, and student success. Lee Coffin has been admissions dean at Dartmouth, Tufts, and Connecticut College. Proud to say that he received his master's degree from the Harvard Ed School, and he also taught a course here on admissions. And I will tell you, these are two just really widely and deeply respected folks in college admissions. So welcome, Rachelle and Lee, and it is wonderful to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
So let's jump into this. Here's what I'd like to start with. I'd like to sort of start with the helicopter view. So sort of pre-COVID-19, which seems like an eternity ago, I know, but where were you in terms of, where do you think college admissions was at generally? Where were you at? And where did you hope it would go? Where were you trying to move college admissions? And either one of you want to jump in?
Go ahead, Rachelle.
Well, I think it's a great question, Rick, and we're going to talk a lot today about college admissions and where it is. I think that the place that we were at and the place that we were going was really focused on making sure that we were increasing access to our colleges and universities across the country, that we were serving students who perhaps had been underserved in college, the college experience, including our first generation students, our low-income students, but also really thinking about how we were serving students and making sure that access was possible from a cost and an affordability perspective. And all of that seems to come after the admissions process, but really what this underscores is a shift to thinking about the admissions process as a student success process. So we want for students to come into our campuses understanding who we are, and if it's a place that they want to be, we want them to come in with full agency as full members of our community. So we have a responsibility to help think about the college experience from a student perspective and make sure that students have access and their families have access. So that I think that's the direction we were going. I hope it's the one that we're still on, but really a commitment to students in the process and making sure our campuses are student ready, student focused.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about...
Lee, just to stop you for 1 second, I just wanted to ask you, Rachelle, could you just say a little bit about your community, who your students are? And
Yes, yes. The University of Texas at Austin serves a very diverse community of students. Over 20% of our students, and our incoming freshman class size is over 8,000 students. We have about 40,000 undergraduate students, and of that population, well over 20% are first generation students. Well over 20% are Pell students. So in any incoming freshman class or first year class, we have well over 2,000 students who identify as first generation and well over 2,000 students who identify as low income students. Our students come from all across Texas, and they also come from across the United States and the world. They are very high achieving students. So they have high expectations of us, and we join their expectations in making sure that we can serve them.
Great. And Lee, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the same question. If you could also just say a little bit about the Dartmouth community, that would be helpful too.
Sure. So Dartmouth is a member of the Ivy League located in Hanover, New Hampshire. We are the smallest member of the Ivies with about 4,400 undergrads, very focused on the liberal arts, excellence in teaching, and kind of my answer to Dartmouth is also my answer to the broader question, which is, what we've been seeing is a pool that is continuing to shift towards the southern United States, towards the western United States, and outside the United States. And it's bringing an opportunity for us to both be introducing the liberal arts to students from communities and families that don't organically line up with that curriculum and are questioning its relevance at our price point in the 21st century. And that to me is an important conversation to be having, while we also talk about how do we remain affordable. I think affordability, particularly in a private institution, is something that has been foremost on my job description this last couple of years, as we try and raise the resources to continue to promote access, to expand our low income population, and then to connect it to Rachel's point about student success. As students are moving through our curriculum and our undergraduate experience, who's thriving? How do we know it? How do we make connections back to what we saw as admission officers, particularly from schools in these growth parts of the US that we don't have a history with them? And how do we know that someone's curriculum and grades coming out of that particular academic environment set them up for success? And when it doesn't, how do we recalibrate either the way we teach, the way we orient, or perhaps the way we think about admissions?
Yeah. So let me just ask you a follow-up question about this. So you both, I think underscored, and I really appreciate this, identifying students who you think will thrive. Do you collect data on students over their 4-year, and do you back map to know whether the decisions you made in admissions, which ones turned out to be right, in the sense that this is a student who thrives and this is the student who might be struggling? Is there that kind of data in there?
It's the fun part of my long and multi-word title, where as Vice Provost for Enrollment, I am looking at this question of success. So as the first year class in particular moves through, in our case, a quarter system, I'm taking snapshots at the end of each quarter and seeing, based on a grade point average anyway, who is thriving, and looking backwards to see, that's not surprising. Who is not? Is that surprising? What patterns, if any, do we start to see among each of those cohorts? And what data did we collect as admission officers that is helping us understand how to review a file and ask what is, to me, a fundamental question that gets overlooked quite often, which is, how do we certify as admission leaders that the student is prepared for the curriculum we offer? I mean, that's what I say every first day of school to the faculty. And it's, the good news is most of the students we're seeing in my pool are prepared, but their degrees of preparation, and we're trying to understand how they move through different parts of the curriculum. Does a STEM focus as a course of study have a different set of prerequisites for success than the humanities?
Great, thank
so we
you.
are doing that.
Yeah.
And I would just add to that, I think the answer that you're looking for, really the short answer is yes, Rick. We're always collecting data, but there's both the quantitative data and the qualitative data that we have to leverage. I think one of the things that we know as at colleges and universities is, if all else fails, the best thing to do is ask our students, because they will communicate to us what they need, and they do it readily, and they also have really good ideas. I mean, we are enrolling these incredible students. They're talented, they're bright, they're curious, and we encourage them to push us. And so we have an obligation to listen to them. So not just the quantitative data, we're collecting that all the time. But I think when you ask about, where were you going and where do you see things going, one of the really incredible things about dealing with a situation like we are right now with this pandemic is that people listen differently. And on our campus, we're seeing all of our senior administrators, our leadership, our deans, our associate deans, and our faculty members really engage with us on both the quantitative and qualitative data that we capture on a regular basis to help inform decisions, to help inform interventions, to make sure we're ready to support students, and that we are doing everything that we can within our obligation, because an admission decision is a student success outcome decision, to make sure that students can progress. I think one of the things that Lee just mentioned, which is important, is we ask ourselves if the students are prepared for success at our institutions, but we also have to turn that around and ask ourselves if our institutions are prepared to support our student success.
Mhm.
So the data not only tells us about our students, but it clearly points out the changes we need to make on a regular basis to remove barriers to success that may exist arbitrarily, may exist because they were put in place 10 years ago and we need to change. So the data goes both ways, but it really is important for us to capture both quantitative data and also the full qualitative picture of the student experience.
Enthusiastic dog in the
I was
back.
gonna say that was me. That's my dog saying hello from down the hall.
That's too much.
That's working from home, right?
There you go.
So let me just shift gears here to the question I think a lot of folks are thinking about, which is how you're adapting during these times and what kinds of challenge, what are the big challenges you're facing? How are you trying to meet those challenges? Rachel, you want to start with this one?
I'd be happy to. So I think it's first important to recognize that all of us are experiencing this big change. So we're all making a lot of shifts and innovations, but everything we do in the admissions and enrollment space is a human endeavor. People are involved on both sides. We've got students and families and school counselors, and we've got ourselves. So the common denominator, the element that we're really focused on as we're making these pivots and these shifts is how we engage, how we increase connection, how we increase relationships. So we are doing like what our colleagues across the country are doing, is that we are offering all of our information sessions for students virtually. We're offering talks and chats with faculty and students virtually. We're running financial aid information sessions and Q&As virtually. And I think what's happening is we're starting to see an opportunity for us to do things differently, not only now, but into the future. So as we make these shifts about how we serve students, we're finding ways to really increase access to information, to give students opportunities to explore our campuses before they come to campus. I have a high school age son at home who all day long would much rather have a first experience online, get to know a campus, before he had to go talk to somebody in person. So I think it's increasing the access, but we're leveraging all the different ways that allow for our families to have access to us when it's most convenient for them. And I think that's one of the takeaways that we all can have across higher education, is really paying attention to making sure that we rethink and consider access to information, rethink and consider access to our campuses.
So Dartmouth's Thayer School of Engineering has a motto for itself. There is no box. So as opposed to thinking outside the box, there just isn't a box. And I keep coming back to that motto because as I reflect on admissions, whether it's recruiting or selecting or the conversations we're having this month and enrolling the class, all of the systems we use are suspended in some way. I mean, as Rachel said, people can't visit, so we're shifting to virtual formats. The transcripts are pass-fail in a lot of high schools now. Testing is optional in a lot of places, or not accessible. We can't travel, so we can't go around the world, around the country to tell our story. And it's pushing me into a much more creative space as a dean. It's making me kind of step back. And I had an epiphany the other day where I realized most of the work we do in a selective admission office are following guidelines that were set in the 20th century. And maybe that's fine and it will all come back in a few months, but maybe it won't. I mean, maybe this moment has triggered a rethinking of some of the ways we recruit, the way we read, and the way we think about, what does a digital native, which is the applicant pool these days, how to Rachel's son's example, their phones are their third hand in so many ways. And so how are they using those devices to explore, and how do we shift towards that new paradigm and not just say, well, we have to do a college fair, and we have to have, you know, an open house in the spring and in the fall because we've always done it that way. Maybe we don't need to do it that way. But I think it's opened up out of necessity a creative space for all of us, because you can't just sit at your desk and do what we did last year. Last year is not replicable right now. I don't know where that goes, but it's sort of where in my head, I keep coming back to rethinking everything that I would typically lead in my office.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any strategies that you're already piloting? Are you doing some?
You know, I mean, the yield conversations have been where I think all of us by necessity kind of jumped from March right into the last 5 weeks. And we've started, like Rachel, offering Zoom versions of our faculty. You know, the question was, how do you showcase excellence in teaching when people can't come to campus? How do we, you know, you can see behind me this really beautiful place in New Hampshire. That sense of place is such an important part of what we do. How do you help someone experience it through a digital platform as opposed to driving to Hanover, New Hampshire and seeing it for yourself? You know, we've been, we've had Zoom conversations with different cohorts of parents where we've been introducing alumni and students to those students and parents. We've done that on campus. We haven't had the same kind of reach. We've done sessions in Spanish through Zoom as a way of being accessible to our Spanish-speaking families. And as we're experimenting, some of it is sticking. I think a year from now, when I'm presuming things are in a bit more of a socially less distanced way, I think we'll continue to do some of the things we've discovered and bring those same yield strategies into the recruitment of students. Because again, we have to. The class of 2025 is going to be recruited on a very different landscape than any class that came before them.
I think I was just going to piggyback on something that Lee said, and one of the things that's happening on our campuses so readily, it happens in many places when we think about yield activities as an example, or how we're introducing students to our experiences. But we have so many faculty members who are directly engaged in wanting to get to meet our prospective students and know our prospective students. One of the things that's been really effective for our campus in opening up sort of the classroom to prospective students and families is that we've had faculty members who have offered to offer some mock classroom experiences for incoming students and their families to be able to engage with them differently and start to help students see what the college classroom experience will be like. But they're doing it because they want to serve students. They're doing it because they love what they're teaching. And perhaps, 6 months ago, they didn't see that as an opportunity. But now everything's on the table. It's about how do we help connect with students? This isn't about sales. This is about fit. And does a student get to see themselves on our campus? Do they feel like they're welcomed in the community? And they're going to be engaged with our faculty when they come to campus in both the in-person and the remote environments. So it's been really exciting, I think, to see our faculty see that they have agency in this process, just like our students do.
And Rick, I think there's an opportunity, we're talking about admissions and student success, but I hope out of all of this also comes an examination of how we assess need. And, I had a colleague at a meeting this winter talking about the aid methodologies are also relics. I think she said they were accidents of history in the 20th century, but we're still following ways of calculating need and then meeting need that certainly are being stretched in the pandemic moment as families come to us and say, I love what you represent. There's no way my family can afford that. And it's particularly acute in the middle class. And my hope, and by bringing this up, if any of you are influencers for FAFSA or for the College Board profile, like how might we take a step back and look at that and say, do these measurements still reflect a family's ability to pay? And if not, how do we rethink that really important part of this admissions conversation that, and we can talk about access, but if people can't afford what we're representing, we failed. And so I think that's the other big question to me that is surfacing really dramatically and urgently.
Great. Let me ask you, we're gonna have to do this a little bit like a lightning round. This I have
Lightning round.
questions I'm just dying to ask you, and we have a ton of questions that people are also asking. One of them is this very tricky question of what are students being admitted to and how you handle that. And, you know, a lot of us, including, you know, at the ed school, a lot of us don't know exactly what students are going to be admitted to. And there's also this issue of cost, right? And should they be expected to pay the same tuition if they're going to be admitted to something that isn't the same as they had anticipated?
Really good questions. We can tag team on this one. I would just say really quickly, the big thing for our students and our families to be thinking about is the undergraduate college experience is a 4-year experience.
Mhm.
We know that we're in a period of transition. We know that this pandemic is affecting a whole host of experiences, both from an educational perspective and otherwise. But as we think about what students are entering, as we think about the costs, we have to be thinking really focused on what the student, how we will serve the student, how the student will experience the education. And for so many campuses across the country, Rick and Lee, we're all seeing the headlines. We are all working to plan for some kind of environment where students can be educated in person. But the fall isn't going to look necessarily like it did last fall. We will resume, you know, our in-person experiences. We will continue to resume what those are. I think the focus for us on students is thinking about what our student needs are. You know, Lee just hit sort of a fine point on this idea that financial aid and student aid isn't going to look like what it did last fall. Our students' needs have changed. The experiences our students and their families are having have changed. So we need to be more flexible. We need to continue to treat every single student as an individual and understand their context and their experience. That's going to translate from aid and cost all the way into the classroom experience, both in a remote experience like we are now and in an in-person experience. So I would say to our students and to our families and to all of us across the country, we're committed to providing the kind of in-person experience that we know will help students prepare for what's next after college. But we also have to recognize that in the short term, it will look different than what it perhaps did a year ago.
Yeah, but I think this is the existential question, like what is college? What is high school? You know, as I think about the seniors in high school, my niece being one of them who was talking to me about, she said, you know, I bought my prom gown. Who's going to sign my yearbook? Will I take the AP tests that I've been studying? You know, and she's got all of these issues as she makes her way through this really important part of all of our lives, you know, your senior spring. So I think it's what is high school as well as what is college, what is community. I mean, I think one of the really poignant questions I was asked last week by an admitted student was, if we remain online in the fall, and that remains a question, not a definitive, yeah, we will. But she said, if we're online, how do we build community which is one of the attractions to the college I represent? How do we build community when we're not in the same place? How do I meet my classmates when all of these strangers pop up on this Zoom screen? And I think it's a really important question. I don't know the answer to that just yet, but I think, you know, because the current class had these.
How do you make friends?
How do you make friends? That's what she was asking. How do I make friends? And does that translate into this virtual space? How does student affairs kind of coordinate, manage, lead all of the work they do, or not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom? How do you counsel students? How do you manage mental health issues? How do you push people, you know, as we build these diverse communities? One of the opportunities I always think of is, how do you bring together people from all these backgrounds, from all around the world, put them in the same place, and have that educational benefit of each other informing your undergraduate experience? You can do that through Zoom. We're doing it now, but is it the same? And but to Rachel's point, is this necessity born out of a pandemic, which has put us, you know, I'm sitting at my kitchen with the dog barking, you know, that this isn't where I normally work. You know, I put a jacket on for the first time in 2 months today, and that felt refreshing to get dressed up again. But no, I think all of us are going through this same upside down moment in the world. And I think college is one of those really important moments. And on the other side of this, whenever we're reunited with one another in person, just like the admission process itself, does the definition of college change? That's a really interesting question for the ed school. Like, how do you kind of reimagine place?
Yeah.
And
Opportunity.
yeah.
It is. And so often, I was just going to say, so often these things, the questions and the answers are complex, but we also can simplify some of these questions and these answers by really focusing on what it is that we know is important to deliver. Our students need a core and solid and robust educational experience. In our campus, and I'm sure at other campuses across the country, all of our first year students enter into a small group. So they're part of a group of 20 students from day one. And we're starting those cohorts and those engagements now.
Mm-hmm.
So they won't wait until orientation. They won't wait until welcome week, but they're starting now. And our students also have so many different ways that they connect with each other. Our incoming first year classes, they know each other, they pick roommates. They have all of these ways already to connect. So again, that simple answer can be, what are the ways that they're already engaging, and how can we as colleges and universities change to meet them where they are?
Right. Yeah. So I want to try and pack together a few questions here, and this is going to be my last question packed together, and then I want to we have a bunch of questions from the audience. This one is about assessment, and I think there are a few parts of it. I mean, one is the SAT and how you think about the SAT and the test optional movement that's going on in the country, which has accelerated in many ways during this time. And I will just say about the SAT very quickly that, I've had lots of concerns about it. I have concerns about it because of the great disparities in access to preparation for it, because it creates so much stress, because of the stigma associated with it. And also that it's not very predictive of success at many colleges too. I mean, variably predictive. So that's one part of the question. Sorry, there's going to be a long question. But the other part is, it seems to me that if you are putting less weight on the SAT, then this is a time where you really can pay serious attention to the social emotional strengths like self-awareness, social awareness, self-regulation, curiosity, empathy, that we know are so strongly predictive of doing well and doing good in college and beyond. So I wonder how you're thinking about this area of assessment. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say one other thing. And the other issue is just context, right? It's picking up the context of people's lives. And this has always been an issue for low-income kids who are, working 20 hours a week or taking care of a sick relative or supervising a younger sibling. And they're getting to school and they're getting B's and C's, and that's incredibly impressive, but that context often isn't getting captured. So I think the other part of this, especially now, given the upheaval in people's lives, is how do you capture that context? The longest question ever, sorry, but you get the point.
I think, as I try and anticipate the 2025 reading cycle, you've just framed out what's waking me up at night right now. Like, how do we start to think and reimagine a college assessment if the high schools are largely giving pass-fail grades right now? If that happens to continue into the fall, a transcript as we know it will look really differently, which there are other ways to assess it, but that's an important shift. If you combine that with a lack of testing, we've removed a lot of data from what would typically have been our assessment. And then we'll, the qualitative elements, the essays, the context, the teacher recommendations and interview. There's a degree of subjectivity in all of those pieces that will need to be thought through, because if, particularly as you move on the selectivity spectrum, the places where we've historically had, the blessings of more applicants than we could admit, sifting through that cohort and shaping a community will be different. Not better or worse, just different than anything that we've had before. So I think you've put your finger on a really important question. I wish a month into the pandemic I had a better answer than that, other than to say it's very much on my mind.
Great, thank you.
And Rick, I would just add, you're asking a lot of the questions that we're asking ourselves, but I think, you started out with where is admissions, where is college enrollment, and where is it going? And I think this question underscores what we all need to be doing on our campuses all the time. We can't just put a process in place and keep it running. Our students are changing, the way we teach is changing, the way our students are succeeding is changing, the world around us is changing. So we have to continue to evolve and make sure that we're using good information. Again, the quantitative data is important. Different assessments help to inform the way we look at information that comes out of students' high schools and helps us understand student performance in their academic courses. But for a lot of us across the country, we've been doing holistic review for a long time, and we've been reading in context. So meaning we're taking into account what resources students have at their high schools, what courses are available at their high schools, and that's the appropriate and ethical way to review a student. How is the student doing in their environment? Because that tells us their motivation, their commitment to their education, and what we'll see when they get to our campuses, even when the environment changes. And I would just say, particularly around the last question you asked, which was, it gets at the context, it gets at assessment and all those kinds of things. One of the things that we've been doing, which is different than a lot of folks across the country, is we've been shifting from the long essay question to a short answer question, for a whole host of reasons. But if you think about this from an equity lens, the essay suggests sort of a polish or an experience that not all of our students may have. And for high school teenagers, it sort of puts them in freeze motion. They're not sure what to say. They just want you to tell them what you're looking for. When we turn that around and we ask a short answer question, we get good, robust, honest information from students. They tell us what they want us to know, not what they think we want, that we think that we want them to tell us. And I think those are the kinds of things that we will start to see and should start to see changing across higher education, that we don't have a process just because we want it to look like we have a process and it looks like everybody else's, but that we are true to our institutions and how we can best educate and serve our students, and that we're asking in our admissions processes the information that we will use to ensure that we're admitting students who will thrive at our institutions and that we're prepared and ensuring student success. So I think that short answer questions is one of those ways, but the context piece, you're going to see more of that really thoughtful thinking about what are our individual institutional missions and how does our admissions process actually reflect that mission.
Great, thank you. So the question I just asked was combining a bunch of questions the audience has asked, but I wanted to ask one more question from the audience, which is getting lots of questions about the class of 2015. And I wondered if you have sort of general advice to juniors right now.
Juniors.
And general advice to both students and parents.
Yeah. So I think we'll probably both have some similar and different responses. The first thing that I think is really important for all of us to be thinking about as we're communicating with our high school sophomores and our high school juniors, those students who are rising juniors and rising seniors and their families, is take a breath. Mm-hmm. This is a moment in time that is extraordinary for all of us. It's different for all of us. And we can take time. I mean, your work, Rick, is all about this. How do we take time to help students have agency in the college search process and to own the college search process? I would encourage both students and families to leverage the virtual opportunities just to get to know college, sort of ease into the experience and leverage the resources that are there, not to put so much pressure. We don't need all the answers today, and all the decisions don't need to be made today, but our campuses are getting much better at making information accessible. To the admissions process itself, our campuses are getting much better at being very transparent about what it is that we're asking and why and how it's going to be used. I think even getting an understanding of how admissions is reviewed, that we're not looking to say no to students. We're looking for reasons to say yes so we can help students be successful. Coming at it from that perspective with this time that we might have to leverage these virtual opportunities will help students sort of take a breath. So I think it's sort of just take a moment, give yourself some time to get acclimated and to get to know some colleges, but also remember that you don't have to make every decision today. Finally, I would say that our students, we want to reduce some of the anxiety around the college search process, especially in this time. There are fantastic colleges and universities for every single student who will be in college in 2 years or in 3 years. And when we really, all of us are recruiting students and admitting students, at the end of the day, you can talk to any admissions dean, any admissions director, and our focus is really on what's right for the student. And so the last piece I would say is that the student should remember they have the ultimate voice and the ultimate choice in this process. They decide where they apply and they decide where they go. Yes, we're making decisions, but the student gets to decide. And I hope that our students and our families don't forget that it's their choice.
Thank you. Lee?
Yeah, I would just quickly, I was thinking about where would a junior normally be in this cycle, and there, typically this would be the discovery phase, like, finishing your junior year, starting to meet with a counselor, a CBO, ideally around what am I thinking about? Like, who am I? Am I liberal arts or pre-professional? Am I going to Texas or New Hampshire? What, that Goldilocks question around just right, too small, too big. And we can still manage a discovery process remotely. The challenge, I think, is how do we help counsel students through that when we're not in the building with them? And as you go into our lower socioeconomic cohorts, I worry about schools that don't have the resource to organize this online opportunity. A CBO that we would have visited in LA or Texas or New York that we can't get to do a workshop. So my guess is the cycle is going to shrink a little bit. So what might have been an 18-month journey may turn into a 9-month journey. And in doing so, I wouldn't be disappointed if in contracting it, that kind of set. And, I think about my own college search in the early 80s. I started it in October of my senior year. And, we've turned the admission process into a 2-year ordeal that might be better reoriented back towards the senior year, not most of the junior year and the senior year. And that may just be a byproduct of what we're experiencing, is that September to December may be discovery and introduction and preparation. And then on the college side, we're going to need to remember that students are coming into next year's application process with less information than they might have had, different kinds of data points that frame their academic record. Next April will be a really different kind of concluding conversation with them, because they may be visiting us for the first time. So I think it's a very fluid moment. And Rachel started with something I've been saying too, is just like, this is the beginning and everything's not set yet. I'm trying to be optimistic as I think about where we go and how we get there. But I also think it's fair to say we don't have all the answers today about what this is going to look like as we build it while we're also driving it. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we do have to wind this up. We asked both of you to share a few key takeaways that I think we're going to see on the screen. But can you walk us through them?
Sure.
Go ahead, Rachel.
So as we think about what's coming up, I think the focus for all of us from the higher ed professional perspective is to focus on our strategies and resources that will help our students engage in our environments and maintain our commitment to learning. That's really about making sure the students remain at the center of our educational mission and the focus for our institutions. Lee and I just talked about, for students who are beginning the college search, just a reminder, you don't have to make every decision now. And we're in this together. The colleges and universities who are interacting with you are not just there to recruit you, they are there to provide information and answer your questions. So if students can take a little bit of time right now and explore virtually, we hope that can lower some of the stress in the process and the urgency to visit everywhere, just to kind of take some time to get acclimated to the process of considering college and looking at college options. And the last thing, I alluded to this earlier, which is that this entire process, everything about the college experience really is a human endeavor. So just a reminder to all of us that our admissions offices they exist to be student-centered places. They're staffed by people who care about students. They're staffed and served by admissions officers and university and college professionals who are really wanting to make sure students have information. So across the country, you're going to see our colleges and universities not only receiving questions, but doing very deliberate outreach to families so that they don't have to go looking for information. So I think if we think about this entirely, if we keep the student at the center of everything that we're doing, and we're thinking about how we deliver educational experiences, how we help students engage in the admissions and the college search process from the student lens, we're going to see a lot of continued positive change in how students explore colleges and make college choices for the future.
Rick, number 3 is what's striking to me as I look at the key takeaways, and the analogy I'll make is, I live in New Hampshire. We just went through the New Hampshire primary, and the weeks and months leading up to that featured what is known as retail politics. Candidates coming to do a town hall with small groups of people, one by one, and it's a really old-fashioned but meaningful way of kind of engaging. And I see college admissions shifting into a retail recruiting context. This past month, we have, at least in the Dartmouth Admission and Financial Aid Office, we have been doing a lot more of these one-on-one Zooms. Our financial aid staff has set up one-on-one Zoom counseling sessions with families all around the world, literally. And we've been talking about how that's been a really meaningful way of using technology to personalize it, to listen to a family individually and guide them. And so I can see that element continuing as we move forward, because it's been really effective and brings me back to the early days of my admission career when I would do interviews and we would have, the pools were smaller and you had time to engage students on a more individualized way. I can see that as an outcome of what we're going through. And to those of us who might be listening, and like me, who have a budget challenge on their desk that we're trying to think through as we move into the next fiscal year. I mean, one of the things I'm preparing to say is we need to keep investing in admissions and financial aid. Like, this is not the part of higher ed that should contract in the face of an economic cliff, because the future needs us to keep engaged and to reimagine what we do. And that's how I'm starting to frame it on my notebook. How do I take what I'm learning in this month to extrapolate, how does my team of admission officers and financial aid officers do what we need to do for the college where we work, to both identify, introduce, evaluate, and then hopefully enroll next year's class one by one. And I'm a smaller place, so maybe this one by one story makes more sense for a place like Dartmouth. But I think the lesson of it could be scalable in other environments too.
Yeah, and I can share from a large campus environment, we're doing the same thing, one-on-one appointments, small group appointments, because if the student's at the center of what we do, it's so much easier for us to make good decisions, to respond to student needs, and to plan for what student needs are going to be in the future. So it makes good educational sense. It's good pedagogy when you think about it, but it's also good business operational sense from an institutional perspective. Our students they're the core of what we do. Our educational missions are the core of our institutions. So as we put them at the center, and just to share a little bit on our units on our campus, our motto is, when we always do what's right for the student, we always do what's right for the university. So, some things are complex, but if you really simplify, what are we trying to do? Who are we trying to serve? And how can we best do that? Turning this around and making sure that we're following things from the student lens informs a whole host of work that we do across our campuses.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to end. But look, we're going to do our Education Now tradition. I want to try and get the high fives from each of you, and the high fives to all of you out there. I want to thank you, everyone. I want to thank you, Lee and Rachel. You both are terrific, and it's just encouraging, heartening to know that you're out there doing this work. We'll keep taking your questions on Facebook. Stay in touch. Check out hgsc.me/ednow to rewatch this and find out about future episodes. Be well and take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.